I'm going to tell you about the worst 40 minutes of my first year at the academy. And I'm going to tell it straight, the way it happened, because I've heard people twist this story into something clean and heroic, and it wasn't clean. It was ugly and loud, and it smelled like burnt copper. And for most of it, I was hiding behind a supply crate with my hands over the slits in my head that we call ears. But I saw it, all of it, and I'm the only one from my dormitory block who still tells it without shaking. My name is Vess. I'm Threnari, if you don't know us. We're tall, thin, gray-skinned, and we were prey for about 11 million years before anybody bothered to teach us how to hold a weapon. That last part matters. Keep it in your head. 11 million years of running. It's written into my blood. When something with too many teeth looks at me, my legs decide things before my brain gets a vote. So understand that when I tell you a human ran toward the thing that came out of the dark, I'm not exaggerating for effect. I mean my whole species felt insulted by it. It broke a law I'd carried since before I was born. Let me start at the beginning, though. Before the alarm, before the retreat. Back when it was just a boring, cold night on a boring, cold moon, and the biggest problem in my life was that the food dispensers only had 2 flavors left. The academy was called Corvin Reach, though everyone just called it the Reach. It sat on Dahlon, the 3rd moon of a gas giant so big it took up a quarter of the sky. Dahlon wasn't a nice place. It wasn't supposed to be. The whole point of putting a joint species military academy there was that Dahlon tried to kill you a little bit every day, and if you could survive the moon, you could probably survive a war. The air was thin and dry, and it tasted faintly of iron. The gravity was heavy enough that you felt it in your knees by evening. Nights lasted around 30 of your hours, and during those nights, the temperature dropped so hard that the training fields grew a skin of blue frost you could hear crunch under your boots from across the yard. The gas giant hung there the whole time, banded orange and rust, throwing down a dim glow that turned everyone's face the color of old bruises. I loved it, I want you to know that. For all its cruelty, I loved the Reach, because it was the first place in my life where nobody looked at me and expected me to run. There were maybe 600 cadets in my intake, drawn from 31 species. We slept in blocks of 40, mixed on purpose so we'd learn each other's smells and habits before we ever had to trust each other with our lives. My block was a decent one. There was Alan, a Kestani with wings he wasn't allowed to use in atmosphere this thin. There was a pair of Dramal siblings who spoke in overlapping sentences and finished each other's thoughts like it was one mind in 2 bodies. There was Suka, tiny and orange and always cold, who'd curl up in the ventilation warmth like a struck match. And there were 4 humans. I need to talk about the humans because if you've never lived beside them, you've only heard the legends, and the legends do them a disservice. The legends make them sound like monsters. They're not monsters. That's the thing nobody prepares you for. They're warm. They laugh too much. They cry over songs. One of them, Delacroix, kept a dead insect she'd found in a shipping container from her homeworld in a little clear box, and she'd talk to it when she thought no one was listening. They are the softest, silliest, most sentimental creatures you will ever meet in your life. Right up until the moment they aren't, and then you understand. The 4 in my block were Delacroix, Bishop, Reyes, and a quiet one named Halloran who everyone called Hal. Delacroix was the loud one, always talking, always fixing something, hands never still. Bishop was broad and slow-moving and had a laugh like a landslide. Reyes was small and sharp and could beat anyone at anything if you let her get competitive about it, which you should never do. And Hal was the one you forgot was in the room until you needed him, and then he was already standing next to you with exactly the tool you needed. I liked them. I want to be honest about that too, because a lot of us didn't at first. There's a fear you carry when you grow up prey, and the humans set it off constantly without meaning to. Something about the way their eyes both point forward, the way they don't flinch when you'd expect a person to flinch. The way they'll walk right up to a thing that could hurt them and pat it, just to see what it feels like. I remember, early on, watching Bishop reach out and touch the electrified fence at the edge of the west field. Not because he doubted it was live. He knew it was live. He just wanted to know how live. He grinned the whole time his arm was twitching. "Why?" I asked him, once my heart had climbed back down out of my throat. "Why would you do that?" And he shrugged, and he said something I didn't understand for a long time. "Gotta know where the line is, Vess. Can't hold a line you never found." I thought it was nonsense then, human noise, the kind of thing they say to sound wise. I don't think it's nonsense anymore. Now the instructor. Our field instructor for survival and small unit tactics was a Syndrel named Solving. If you've never met a Syndrel, picture something built from folded stone and old patience, low to the ground, six-limbed, plated in gray-green chitin that clicked when the temperature changed. Solving was old. Old enough to have fought in the Meridian campaigns, old enough that half its plating was scarred pale, old enough that it had stopped being afraid of most things and started being careful about all of them, which is a wisdom that only comes from surviving your own recklessness. Syndrel doctrine is survival doctrine. It's the doctrine of a species that also spent a long time being hunted before it climbed the ladder, and it's simple and it's smart and it's kept a lot of people alive. When the odds turn against you, you break contact. You live. You come back with better odds. A dead soldier protects nothing. Solving believed that with its whole body. And I want to be fair to it before I tell you the rest of this, because when the story gets told wrong, Solving comes out looking like a coward, and it was not a coward. It was the opposite. It had watched too many bright young cadets throw their lives into a fire that didn't need them, and it had decided, somewhere in its long gray life, that it would not do that to another child if it could help it. So when Solving ordered the evacuation, it was not fear talking. It was 100 years of grief. Keep that in your head too. This isn't a story about a coward and some heroes. It's messier than that. It's a story about two kinds of people who both loved us and both wanted to save us and completely disagreed about how. The night it happened, we were doing a cold drill. Cold drills were the worst. They ran them in the deepest part of the Dahlin night when the frost was thickest, and the point was to teach us to function when our bodies were begging us to shut down and sleep. We'd been marched out to Grid 9, a supply and staging depot on the far edge of the training range, about 2 hours' hike from the main compound. It was a cluster of prefab structures, storage warehouses mostly, half buried in the frost, lit by a few emergency lamps that buzzed and flickered in the cold. There were maybe 30 of us out there. My block and one other, plus Solving and a young Syndrel aide named Tessek who never spoke above a whisper. The drill was inventory and defense. Boring stuff. We were supposed to secure the depot, log the supplies, set up a watch rotation, and hold the position until dawn around 14 more hours. Nothing was supposed to happen. That was the whole idea of a cold drill. Nothing happens and you have to stay ready anyway, hour after hour, while your fingers go numb and your mind starts playing tricks and the cold whispers that it would be so easy, so warm, to just close your eyes. I was on inventory duty in Warehouse 2 with Sukha and Delacroix. Sukha was miserable, shivering so hard her orange fur blurred at the edges. Delacroix had wrapped her own outer coat around the little one without being asked, and was working in her undershirt, breath fogging, not complaining, just counting crates and calling out numbers for me to log. "Vess," she said at one point, not looking up, "you okay? You've gone quiet." I hadn't realized I'd gone quiet. I get like that in the cold and the dark, some ancestral thing. When you're prey, the dark is where the teeth live, and part of me was always listening. "I don't like this place," I admitted. She smiled, still counting. "Yeah, what's wrong with it?" "It's too open. The dark goes too far. If something came, we wouldn't see it until it was close." She stopped counting then, just for a second, and she looked at the big warehouse doors which were open to the night, and out past them at the frost field stretching black and blue toward the tree line. I didn't know it then, but she'd felt it too. Some human version of the same old animal sense. Something not right in the dark. She didn't say so. She just went and pulled the doors most of the way shut, leaving a gap you could see through, and she said, light and easy, better. Better, I lied. It wasn't better. Nothing was going to be better that night, but I loved her a little right then for trying. The first sign was the animals. Dahlan has a native creature the cadets called frost hares, though they weren't hares and they weren't friendly. Little six-legged things that burrowed in the frost and came out at night to graze on the moss that grew on the warm patches near the depot's heat vents. You got used to the sound of them. A constant low scratching and skittering, all night, everywhere. Background noise. The sound of a place that's alive. Around the 4th hour, the scratching stopped. I noticed before anyone else because I'm built to notice. My head came up from the crate I was logging and I stood there, very still, the way my grandmother taught me to stand still, and I listened to the enormous silence that had swallowed the depot. "Delacroix," I whispered. "I hear it," she said. She'd already gone still too, or I don't hear it, yeah. The silence had a texture. That's the only way I can describe it. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. Something out in the dark had made every small living thing on that field decide, all at once, to stop existing and hope. I know that feeling. I was born knowing that feeling. "There's a predator," I said. My voice came out thin. "There's a predator on the field." Delacroix didn't laugh at me. That's the thing about the humans, the thing that saved us. She could have. Threnari get twitchy, everybody knows it. We jump at shadows, it's a whole reputation. She could have told me I was spooked and gone back to counting crates. Instead she keyed her calm and said, "Instructor solving, Delacroix in warehouse 2. The field's gone quiet. Native fauna's cleared out. Vess is calling a predator and I trust his read." There was a pause on the line, just breath and static. Then Solving's voice, calm and heavy and slow, acknowledged, "All cadets cease inventory. Weapons check. Tesek, run the sensor sweep. Nobody leaves a structure until I have a picture." And that was the last calm minute any of us had. Tesek's sweep found it in 90 seconds. I wasn't in the command shed, so I got this part second-hand later from Reyes, who was. She said the young Syndril aide went very still looking at the sensor return, and then it made a sound she'd never heard a Syndril make. A kind of low double click, deep in its chest. "Instructor," Tesek whispered. "It's a Vrajo." I felt the whole depot change when that word came over the general channel, because everybody knew what a Vrajo was. Everybody. Let me explain, for those of you lucky enough not to. A Vrajo is not from Dahlan. Nothing that dangerous is native to a training moon. The Academy would never allow it. Later they figured out it had come in on a supply hauler, in cold sleep, curled in a cargo pod, and woken up hungry on a strange cold world, and gone looking for the largest concentration of warm bodies it could find. Which was us. The Vrajo homeworld is a place called Gret. And Gret is what the humans would call a death world, and what my people would simply call the end of a bad dream. It's a jungle world with crushing gravity and a whole biosphere designed around eating itself. The Vrajo sit at the very top of that. Apex ambush predators. They stand maybe 3 meters when they rear up, but they don't usually rear up, they move low and fast and silent, on 6-clawed limbs, and their hide bends light so your eye slides right off them in the dark. They hunt by patience. They'll follow prey for days, taking nothing, letting the fear build, because fear tenderizes the meat and tires the runner. And when they finally strike, they strike from a range and a speed that your nervous system cannot argue with. A single Vrajo, on a good day, has been recorded killing 11 armed Cadets soldiers before going down. And the Cadets are not prey. The Cadets are a warrior species with claws of their own. And there was one of those things on our field in the dark, between us and home, and there were 30 cadets who had never fired a weapon at a living target in their lives. I sat down. I want to be honest. I just sat down on the cold floor of Warehouse 2 with my back against a crate, and I put my hands over my ear slits, and I did the thing my body has done for 11 million years, which is to make itself small and quiet and pray. Delacroix crouched down in front of me. She put her warm human hands on my gray shoulders. "Vess," she said, "Vess, look at me." I looked at her. Her eyes both pointed at me, forward, steady, and for once it didn't frighten me. For once it was the only steady thing in the world. "We're gonna be okay," she said. And I believed her, which was insane, because there was no reason at all to believe her. Solvin made the right call. I need to say that clearly, because everything I'm about to tell you might make it sound like the old Syndrel was wrong, and it wasn't wrong. By every book ever written, by every doctrine of every species that ever survived a predator, Solvin made exactly the right call. It ordered the evacuation. The reasoning came over the comm in that same slow, heavy voice, and it was flawless. We were 30 untrained cadets. We had light training weapons, stunners and low-yield markers, tools for practice, not for war. The depot was indefensible, open on 3 sides, full of gaps a Vrahel could pour through like water. And the thing about a Vrahel, the crucial thing, is that it hunts fear and stillness. It hunts things that hide. So Solvin's plan was the survival plan, the prey plan. The plan 100 generations of hunted species have written in blood. Don't hide. Don't clump up in a kill box and wait to be picked off. Scatter, move fast, make for hard cover, get to the extraction point 2 kilometers north where the terrain was tighter and the compound's defense grid could cover us. "On my mark," Solvin said, "all cadets evacuate north by squads. Move fast, move loud, stay in the light where you can. A Vrahel prefers a silent kill. Deny its silence. Deny its stillness. We run, we live, we let the compound's guns handle it." Nobody, and here the old instructor's voice caught just slightly, just enough that I heard a century of dead cadets in it. Nobody plays hero. Heroes feed it. We are not going to feed it tonight. It was a good plan. It was the right plan. And the humans didn't move. I don't mean they refused loudly. That's another thing the legends get wrong. There was no grand speech, no cadet standing up and declaring defiance while music swelled. That's not how it went. It was quieter and stranger than that, and it took me years to understand what I'd actually watched happen. What happened was this. The evacuation started. My squad, me, Suka, Alan, the Dramal siblings, and Reyes was supposed to go first, because we were closest to the north side. Solvin's aide Tessek came to gather us and get us moving, and we started to move. Suka was up and running before the order finished. Honestly, the little Kestany was pure flight instinct, same as me. I got up. My legs were happy to get up. My legs had been begging to run for the last 4 hours. And then I noticed Reyes wasn't moving. She was standing by the half-open warehouse doors, looking north, at the route we were supposed to take, at the 2 kilometers of open frost between us and the extraction point. And she said, to no one in particular in this flat, quiet voice, "It wants us to run." I stopped. What? It cleared the field. It let us hear that it cleared the field. She was talking slowly, working it out as she spoke, the way Hal fixed engines, one piece at a time. A thing that hunts by patience doesn't announce itself by accident. It scared off every animal for a kilometer, and it made sure we'd notice. Why would it do that? I didn't have an answer. My legs had an answer. My legs said, "Who cares? Run." "Because it wants us in the open," Reyes said. "It wants us strung out in a line, scared, running in the dark 2 kilometers from cover. That's not our escape route. That's its dinner table. It herded us there." Over the comm, I heard Delacroix's voice in the other warehouse, saying almost the exact same thing to Solvin. And I heard Bishop. And I heard Hal, who never talked, say 4 words that I have never forgotten. "We can't run this." Here's what you have to understand about that moment. And it's the thing that took me years, and it's the thing this whole story is really about. The humans weren't being brave. I mean they were, but that's not the part that mattered, and it's not the part that saved us. Bravery, I understand. Even a prey species has brave individuals, the ones who turn at bay when the herd is threatened, who buy time with their own bodies. I've seen Threnari be brave. Bravery is just fear with somewhere to point. This was different. This was cold. This was Ray's standing at that door doing arithmetic while every instinct in every other body in that room screamed flee. This was 4 humans, independently in 2 different buildings, looking at the exact same trap and refusing to walk into it. Not because they were too brave to be afraid, but because they were, in that specific moment, entirely unafraid in a way I did not have a word for. I have a word for it now. I learned it from them, later, and it's the ugliest and most beautiful word in their language. Spite. The Vrahel wanted them to run, and some deep, stubborn, contrary thing in the human animal looked at what the predator wanted and decided, not out of courage, but out of pure, stubborn refusal, no. Not because you told me to. I'll die before I do what a thing with teeth tells me to do. You have to be a very strange creature to feel that. You have to come from a world where you spent 1,000,000 years being the thing that other things ran from, at least sometimes, at least enough that somewhere in your blood there's an old memory of turning around. My people never turned around. We ran, and we survived by running, and running made us who we are, and I am proud of it. But the humans remember, somewhere down in the meat, what it was like to be the thing in the dark. And when a real predator tried to herd them like prey, that memory woke up and it was insulted. Salvin repeated the order, sharper this time. Delacroix, Bishop, all human cadets, this is not a request. Evacuate north. Now. And Delacroix's voice came back, and I will love her forever for how gentle it was, because she wasn't defying the old Syndrel to hurt it. She wasn't a rebellious child. She understood exactly what Salvin was trying to do and why, and she was so sorry to do this to it. Instructor, she said, with respect, if we run that field it kills us on the field, all of us, slow, one at a time, that's what it's set up for, you know it is. A long pause. The doctrine, Salvin started. The doctrine's right for a real predator hunting real prey, Delacroix said. So let's stop being prey. I want you to hear that sentence the way I heard it, crouched on a cold floor with my hands over my ears and my whole ancestral being telling me to flee. Let's stop being prey. Like it was a choice, like it was a thing you could just decide. To me that was blasphemy. That was a fish saying let's stop being wet. To Delacroix it was just a plan. They didn't disobey the evacuation. This is the part that gets lost. They didn't ignore the order. They modified it on the fly in about 90 seconds over an open comm channel, 4 humans and an old Syndrel and a moon full of terrified aliens, and they built a new plan while the predator circled. The plan was raises, mostly, though Hal fixed the holes in it and Bishop supplied the muscle and Delacroix supplied the thing that mattered most, which was that everyone believed her. The plan was this: we would not run. Running was death. But we would not hide either, because hiding was the other death. The Vrahel would come into the warehouses one at a time and pull us out of the dark corners we'd curled into, and it would take all night, and it would be quiet and awful. Instead, we would do the one thing the predator's entire biology was not built for. We would gather. We would make ourselves loud. We would make ourselves bright. We would put all 30 of us in the single most defensible structure in the depot, Warehouse 1, the big central one with only 2 entrances, and we would light every light we had and make every sound we could make, and we would deny the Vrahel the 2 things it needed: silence and isolated prey. It hunts things that run and things that hide, Reyes said over the comm, and now her flat voice had an edge to it, something almost eager, and it frightened me nearly as much as the Vrahel did. So we do neither. We stand in the light in a crowd and we dare it. It's an ambush predator. Ambush predators don't charge a lit, packed room full of standing, shouting targets. It's not built for a fair fight. It's built for a quiet one. So we take quiet off the table. And if you're wrong, Solvin asked, not cruelly, genuinely, an old teacher's last check. And Hal answered, Hal who never spoke. Then we're wrong together in the light where we can see it, he said, instead of alone in the dark where we can't. I'll take the first one every time. Solvin made a sound I'd never heard from it. A long, slow exhale through its breathing plates, like stone settling. And then the old Syndrel did the bravest thing in the whole story, and nobody ever tells this part, and it makes me want to weep. It changed its mind. You have to understand what that costs a creature like Solvin. 100 years of doctrine. 100 years of this is how you survive. This is the only way. I have watched everyone who did otherwise die. And here were 4 soft, warm children telling it that the book was wrong for tonight, and every instinct it had was screaming that they were about to feed themselves to the dark. And it looked at the picture. It looked at the 2 kilometers of open frost. It looked at the sensor return where the Vrahel sat, patient, waiting for us to do the predictable prey thing and run into its jaws. And it said, Warehouse 1, all cadets, now move like you mean it. Then quieter, on a private channel to Delacroix that I only heard about later. If you are wrong, human, I will have failed 30 children, and I will carry it the rest of my life. And Delacroix said, if I'm wrong, you won't be alone carrying it. I'll be right there in the pile. Which is a horrible thing to say. And it made the old Syndrel laugh, a dry, clicking Syndrel laugh, the first and only time I ever heard it, and I think that laugh is the reason it followed a cadet's plan, not because it believed. Because it decided it would rather die trusting these strange, warm children than live having run from them. Getting 30 cadets into Warehouse 1 took 4 minutes, and it was the longest 4 minutes of my life. We moved in a tight clump, all of us, between the structures, across the open ground, and the whole time my skin was crawling because I knew, with the certainty of 11 million years that it was watching. You can feel a predator's attention. It's a weight on the back of your neck. It's a pressure behind your eyes. Every animal instinct I owned was shrieking at me to break from the group and run. Run alone, run fast, because the herd is where the predator strikes and the loner sometimes lives. Delacroix must have seen it in me. She grabbed my hand, her warm hand around my cold gray fingers, and she said, low and fierce, don't you dare run, Vess. Don't you dare. Stay in the crowd. The crowd is life tonight, I promise you. The crowd is life. Everything I was said she was wrong. I stayed in the crowd. It's the only reason I'm alive. We got into Warehouse 1, and we sealed the smaller of the 2 entrances with everything we could stack against it, crates, a broken loader, anything with mass. The main door we left open, deliberately, because Reyes wanted the Vrahel to have exactly one obvious way in, one channel, one throat, so that all 30 of us and every weapon we had could face it. Then we lit the place up. Every emergency lamp, every hand light. Bishop and Hal rigged the depot's main floods to point inward, and Delacroix cross-wired a supply of signal flares to burn on a slow rotation. Within 10 minutes that warehouse was brighter than a Dala noon. It hurt to look at, which was the whole point. A Vrahel's light-bending hide is worthless in a flood of light from every direction at once. In there, it would have nowhere to be invisible. In there, it would be a thing, a solid, ugly thing that we could all see and all point weapons at. And then the humans made us loud. This is the part I still can't fully explain. Bishop started it. He just started shouting, not words exactly. A big, low, rhythmic, wordless roar from the bottom of his chest, and he stamped his boot on the metal floor in time with it, boom and shouted and boom and shouted, and the sound filled that whole bright warehouse. And then Delacroix joined, and Reyes, and Hal, quiet Hal, roaring like the rest. 30 aliens stood there watching 4 humans stamp and roar at the darkness, and I thought they had lost their minds. I thought the fear had broken them. Then Delacroix looked back at us, at all of us huddled and shaking, and she yelled over the noise. "It hunts silence, so we're not gonna give it any. Loud, everybody, make it know we see it, make it know we're not scared." We were, of course, extremely scared, but that's the thing the humans understand that my people never did. You can be terrified and act like a predator anyway. The acting is enough. The predator can't tell the difference. The predator only knows that prey does not stand in a bright room and roar at the dark, and so whatever is making that sound, whatever those creatures are, they are not prey. They are not what it came for. They are something wrong. So we roared, even me. Threnari don't roar. Our voices aren't built for it. We make a high, thin, keening sound at best. But I opened my throat and I made the worst, thinnest, most ridiculous noise, and I stamped my thin gray feet on the metal floor, and Delacroix, running past to fix a light, clapped me on the back and shouted, "There he is," and grinned at me like I'd done the finest thing she'd ever seen. And something happened in me, right then, that I have never fully recovered from and never want to. For 1 second, one single second, I stopped being afraid. For 1 second, 11 million years of running went quiet, and there was just a gray Threnari in a bright loud room full of friends, roaring at the dark, daring it to come. I understood the humans then, just for that 1 second. I understood what it costs them and what it gives them and why they're the way they are. And then the second passed and I was terrified again, but I was never quite the same terrified. There was a new thing underneath it now, a small, hard, stubborn thing. They'd given it to me, like a disease, like a gift. The Vrahel came at the 5th hour. It came the way they always come. You don't see it start, you only see it finish. One moment the open doorway was just a rectangle of blue-black night. The next moment the night was inside. 3 meters of low, silent muscle pouring across the threshold faster than my eye could follow, and my whole body locked up, and every animal in that room made its animal sound, and I thought, this is it. This is how I die. And then it hit the light. I will never forget it. The thing came in fast and low, built for the dark, built to be a shadow that ate you before you knew it was there. And it crossed the threshold into that wall of white floodlight, and its whole hide, which should have bent the light and hidden it, just lit up, revealed, exposed. A huge, ugly slate-gray monster suddenly visible from every angle at once, with nowhere to hide and nowhere to be a shadow. And it flinched. I saw it. 30 aliens and 4 humans saw it. The apex predator of a death world, the thing that kills 11 Kadesh warriors on a good day, crossed our threshold and flinched, because it had come to do a quiet murder in the dark. And instead it found itself standing exposed and blazing lit in front of 30 roaring, stamping, staring creatures who would not run and would not hide and would not shut up. It was built for silence. We had taken silence away. It was built for one panicked prey animal fleeing alone. We had given it 30 animals standing shoulder to shoulder facing it down. Its whole biology, 300 million years of evolution on the worst world in the galaxy, had prepared it for a hunt that we simply refused to have. It didn't retreat right away. I want to be truthful, it wasn't that easy. It stood in the light and it recovered from the flinch, and it dropped its huge head low, and it made a sound I felt in my teeth, a deep subsonic hunting thrum designed to freeze prey solid, and half of us did freeze. My legs turned to stone. Suka fainted. One of the Dramal siblings started to bolt for the sealed door. And that's when the humans stopped acting like a wall and started acting like what they are. Bishop met the Dramal who was bolting, caught it, turned it around, put it behind him, and stepped forward, toward the Vrahel. One step, then another, roaring the whole time, stamping, and this is the part no one believes. He picked up a signal flare that was burning on the floor and he held it up over his head and he walked at the monster. And behind him, without a word, Hal moved up on his left and Ray's on his right, and Delacroix a step behind, and she was calling to the rest of us, "Hold the line, hold it. Nobody moves back. If you move back, you're prey. If you hold, you're a wall. Hold." 4 humans, walking toward Evraho, holding fire over their heads. And I don't know what happened to me. I've thought about it for years and I still don't understand it. My legs, my traitor legs, my 11 million-year-old prey legs that have never once in my life carried me toward danger, my legs took a step forward, toward the monster, next to Delacroix. I think I was crying. Threnari cried differently than humans, but I think that's what it was. And then Alan stepped up, and a Draymal. And Tessek, the young Syndral aide, moved up beside Bishop. An old Solving, old scarred Solving, who had spent 100 years teaching us to run, dragged its ancient armored body to the front of the line, and reared up on its rear limbs to make itself huge, and let out a war cry from the Meridian campaigns that no cadet had ever heard, a sound its species had not made in 50 years. 34 creatures, 31 species, walking toward the predator, roaring, holding fire, refusing. The Vrajo looked at us. I was close enough by then to see its eyes. 4 of them, black and wet and ancient, and I swear to you, I swear on my grandmother's bones, there was something in them I recognized. Because I've felt it my whole life. I felt it looking at things bigger and hungrier than me. The Vrajo was confused, and underneath the confusion, for the first time in that creature's entire terrible life, there was the very beginning of fear. It did not know what we were. Its instincts had a category for prey, the thing that runs, the thing that hides, the thing whose fear you can taste. And its instincts had a category for rival predators, the thing you avoid, the thing that costs too much, the thing you do not fight because the fight is not worth the meal. And we did not fit the first category. So its ancient reflexes, the deepest survival math of a death world apex, sorted us, by elimination, into the second. These things are not prey. Prey runs, prey hides. Prey is quiet and alone and afraid. These things are loud and bright and many, and they are walking toward me holding fire. These things are predators, and there are 30 of them, and I am one. It backed up. 1 step, its huge clawed forelimb sliding backward across the metal floor. And Bishop saw it, and Bishop laughed that landslide laugh, huge and delighted and utterly mad, and he shouted, "There it is. It knows. It knows. Keep coming, keep coming. We are the scariest thing on this moon, and it knows." And we kept coming. And the Vrassel broke. It turned this thing that had never turned from anything, this apex of apexes, this nightmare from the worst world ever born. It turned, and it poured back out through the doorway into the dark it had come from. And it was gone, and the night swallowed it. And the sensor sweep tracked it running, actually running, all the way to the tree line and beyond, off into the frost, away from the depot, away from the bright loud room full of creatures who would not be hunted. The predator retreated. We did not. Nobody cheered. That's the last thing the legends get wrong. In the stories there's a cheer, a triumph, cadets embracing. It wasn't like that. It was silence, real silence for the first time all night, and it was the good kind. 34 creatures standing in a too bright room, breathing hard, shaking, some of us crying, some of us laughing the shaky, broken laugh you laugh when you were sure you were going to die, and then you didn't. Sukha woke up from her faint and looked around and said in her tiny voice, "Did we win?" And Bishop scooped her up off the floor and held her like she weighed nothing and said, "Yeah, little one, we won. You slept through the good part." And she started crying, and he just held her. I found Delacroix. She was sitting on a crate, all the fire gone out of her now, her hands shaking so hard she couldn't make them stop, and I realized she'd been terrified too. The whole time, every second. She'd been just as scared as me. She just decided not to let it drive. I sat next to her. I didn't have words. Threnari don't for moments like that. So I did the human thing, the thing I'd watched them do, and I leaned my gray shoulder against her warm one, and she leaned back, and we sat there shaking together in the bright light. "You stepped forward," she said after a while. Her voice was wrecked. "At the end, I saw you. You stepped toward it, Vess." "My legs did," I said. I didn't tell them to." She laughed, wet and broken. "That's the best kind of brave, the kind you didn't plan." "I'm Threnari," I said. "We don't do that, we're not built for it. We run, that's what we are, that's all we've ever been." And she turned and looked at me, both eyes forward, steady even now with her hands shaking. And she said the thing I've carried every day since. The thing this whole story is really about. The thing I came here to tell you. "Vess," she said, "that's what you were. You just found out it's not all you are." Solving found us there, a minute later. The old Syndrel lowered itself down in front of us, slow and heavy, plating clicking in the cold. And it looked at Delacroix for a long, long moment with those flat ancient eyes. And then it did the thing that I think about more than the Vrahel, more than the fire, more than any of it. Solving bowed to her. A Syndrel bow, deep, both forelimbs folded, head to the floor. The bow they give to combat elders, the bow they give to soldiers who taught them something. 100-year-old veteran of the Meridian campaigns, folding itself to the ground in front of a first-year cadet who hadn't been alive a fraction of its life. "I was wrong," Solving said. "My doctrine kept 10,000 cadets alive across 100 years. It would have killed all 30 of you tonight, and I could not see it because I have been prey so long that I forgot there was another way to survive." It lifted its head. "You did not just save these children, Cadet Delacroix. You taught an old soldier something new. Do you know how rare that is, to teach an old soldier something new?" Delacroix, still shaking, said, "I didn't do anything special. I just didn't want to run." "No," Solving said, "you didn't." And that is the entire lesson. It turned its ancient scarred head and looked at all of us, 31 species, huddled and shaking and alive. Doctrine is the wisdom of the dead saved up to protect the living. It is precious. Never throw it away lightly. A pause. But it is the wisdom of the dead, and sometimes the living are in a situation the dead never faced. And in that moment, it looked back at Delacroix. You need someone stubborn enough to look at the whole galaxy's accumulated wisdom and say no. Not tonight. Tonight we do it differently. You need someone who would rather be wrong on their feet than dead on the run. It stood slowly, all 6 limbs unfolding. "Humans," it said almost to itself, "are that someone. I have wondered for 100 years why the galaxy fears you. Tonight I stopped wondering." A dry, clicking Syndrel laugh. "You are the only species I have ever met who can look at a predator and be offended." That's most of the story. There's an ending, and I'll give it to you, but I want to say one more thing first, because I've told this story a lot of times and people always take the wrong lesson from it. They think the lesson is humans are fearless. It isn't. Delacroix's hands shook for an hour. Bishop cried in the shower that night. The walls were thin and I heard him, and I've never told anyone until now. Reyes didn't sleep for 3 days. Quiet Hal didn't speak for a week, even less than usual, and when he finally did, the first thing he said was, "I keep seeing its eyes." They were not fearless. They were the most afraid I have ever seen anyone be. And they walked toward it anyway. That's the lesson. That's the whole thing. Courage was never the absence of the fear. My people were wrong about that for 11 million years. We thought brave meant unafraid, and since we were always afraid, we thought we could never be brave, and so we never tried, and so we ran, and running became all we were. The humans taught me the truth. Courage is the fear plus one more step. That's all. That's the entire secret of the most feared species in the galaxy. They feel everything we feel, every drop of terror, every screaming instinct to run. And then they take one more step forward anyway, out of love or spite or stubbornness or all three. And that one step is the difference between prey and predator. It was never about being unafraid. It was about deciding the fear didn't get to choose. Here's the ending. 3 years later, I graduated Corvin Reach, top of my class in threat reading, which, a Threnari topping anything with the word threat in it, used to be a joke. It isn't a joke anymore. Turns out 11 million years of being hunted makes you very, very good at knowing when something's about to hunt you. My whole species is retraining now, all across the fleet, because it turns out the best sensor for an ambush is a creature that spent its entire evolution being ambushed. We were never weak. We were just pointed the wrong way. The humans turned us around. I serve now on a joint deep recon cutter. My squad mate is a human named Akafer who reminds me of Bishop, big and loud and far too willing to touch things that might be electrified. Last month we made contact with a Vrahel nest on a survey world, a real nest, a dozen of them, and my squad wanted to run and I said no. I said we don't run this. I said lights up, loud, stand together. We are the scariest thing on this world and we're going to make sure they know it. And they looked at me, the gray Threnari, the prey species, telling them to walk toward a nest of Deathworld apex predators holding fire over our heads. And they did it, because I said it like I believed it. And the Vrahel retreated, all 12 of them, off into the dark, away from the loud, bright creatures who would not be hunted. I sent a message that night back to Delacroix. She's a full lieutenant now, stationed halfway across the galaxy, and we don't talk much. Life pulls you apart. But I sent her 3 words. The 3 words I heard Hal say on the worst night of my life, the 3 words that started everything. We can't run this. She sent back 1 word. Good. So that's the story, the real one, not the clean one. An old soldier ordered an evacuation, and it was the right order, and it would have killed us all. And 4 soft, warm, frightened human children looked at the wisdom of the entire galaxy and decided, out of pure stubborn refusal, that they would rather die on their feet in the light than run in the dark like the prey the predator wanted them to be. And the strangest part, the part I think about most, is that they were right. Not because they were fearless, not because they were stronger than the Vrahel, they weren't, not even close. They were right because they understood something the rest of the galaxy forgot a long time ago. A predator doesn't hunt what fights back. A predator hunts what runs. So don't run. Stand in the light, make yourself loud, take the 1 more step. Not because you're not afraid, you'll be afraid. You should be afraid. The fear is just information. Take the step anyway. That's the whole thing. That's everything the humans taught a gray prey animal on a cold moon a long time ago. The fear doesn't get to choose. You do.